So we've seen recently the phenomenon of the woke right, the kind of conspiratorial, somewhat extreme, sometimes racist, segment, fringe of the conservative right in America and across the Western world. I'm talking figures like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, etc., etc. And Douglas Murray here, in a fascinating conversation with Brendan O'Neill on Spiked, and I'll post the link to the full conversation below in the description. They talk about the woke right, and this is Douglas, who hasn't said too much about it, although he was famous for going against Dave Smith on Joe Rogan's podcast about Israel. Douglas Murray gives his analysis of the situation, and I think this is much needed to bring some of Douglas's sanity to understanding this rising phenomenon. As I say, I haven't seen him speak so much about this, so it's actually great to see this now in this clip on why is the right turning on Israel. Some of it. Have a watch.
But that isolationist tendency is there. Then you add in various other things, and they include, for instance, now a belief that somehow America would not be in trouble in the Middle East or any other region if it weren't for Israel. That America is somehow being tainted by association with Israel. And if we only cozied up to our real friends, Qatar, the Ayatollah, that would all be better. And therefore, Israel becomes like the cause of your problems.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other things going on as well. One thing that I became very aware of when I was writing my book, The Strange Death of Europe, and trying to get an early sense of European movements of the right, was that there are also attempts to radically rewrite history because of the awkwardness of certain things that happened in history. If you are holding a view about what has gone wrong, I became very alert to right-wing movements on the continent of Europe, for instance, who, when you think like, why do you play around with things like this is on the fringes, but nevertheless, sometimes you sort of need to get a whiff of what is happening on the fringes to see what might come in. There was always a problem on the European right that there were portions of it that would blame Israel and the Jews in particular for mucking up the whole cause of their ethno-nationalist project.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that if the Jews hadn't been massacred in the Holocaust, we could have got on with our ethno-nationalist projects or our right-wing projects or whatever. And the Holocaust and the Jews and the creation state of Israel causes a problem for these people. And you can definitely hear that on parts of the American right now, which is because of the 1940s, our desires and our projects got upset.
Yeah.
And therefore, what can we do? One is to try to deny that or try to get around it. Another is to play all sorts of games, the Canaanite tendency, which is, if we hadn't have got involved, then we wouldn't be in the problems that we're currently in. If we'd have allowed the Nazis and the communists to fight it out, we wouldn't have, American cities covered with fentanyl-laced drugs and, homelessness and all of these problems. It's a not very well thought out, but existing strain in American conservative right-wing political thought at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very low grade. And besides anything else, is sort of always a futile thing because conservatives in particular always have a tendency to sort of say, where is the moment that the thing went wrong? And that's very interesting as an intellectual exercise. And it's pretty hopeless as a political exercise because there's nothing you can do about it now.
Yeah.
I mean, if only in the War of Independence in America we hadn't done Y. Well,
yeah,
but we're here because history happened. and it's useful and interesting to work out where the things have gone wrong, and it's simultaneously slightly hopeless. But yeah, I'm still really I'm watching this movement on the American right and it's still somewhat unclear exactly what is going on. But then that's because the movement itself is unclear and is trying to work out its own thoughts on the fly. But I think that one other thing I would say is I think a lot of the people who are in a very specific anti-Israel place are there because, wittingly or otherwise, they've been pushed there by the pressures of the time. Nobody is going to berate a television host or a podcast host for not having said enough about Sudan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no campus will be protested and no graduation ceremony in America will be protested because of a lack of focus in that semester by the university administration on the killing going on in Sudan.
Yeah.
But there are these people from the university heads to the sort of Piers Morgans who will feel like they have to have a stance on like phase 2 of the conflict in Gaza. And they get pushed into it.
Yeah.
Wittingly or otherwise. I think largely unwittingly. Why haven't you spoken about this? Why haven't you condemned Y? Oh, so you're a supporter of Z.
Yeah. As you say, it's very low grade. I find it incredibly worrying. It's hard to work out how influential these strains will become, but there does seem to be a pincer movement of scapegoating at the moment. So the left scapegoats Israel and has been doing for some time, and now sections of the right are doing a similar thing.
Yes.
And the Churchill bashing, this kind of revision.
I think Brendan O'Neill and Douglas Murray, they are two righteous among the nations, to be quite blunt about it. They are incredible stalwarts of just moral and sane commentary on what's going on in our world. And as I say, I'll put the link to watch the full thing below. But I think Douglas's analysis is right, that people are feeling this pressure. Anti-Semitism kind of works as like this tidal wave where people feel that they have to conform almost. And to be honest, that's why I think people speaking out and trying to push the tide back in the other way is so essential. It's important that we not just be bystanders, but that we actually get out the truth for people to see. Because there's so much incoherence in the anti-Israel narratives of both the right and the left. And as Douglas said, they can't even figure out their own logic. As he was actually saying earlier on in this piece, before the clip I showed you, he said, there's a growing isolationist movement on the right, but they want to be ultra isolationist whilst also being the world superpower. And it's like, figure that one out. How can you be a world superpower whilst completely isolated from the world as well? It doesn't quite work like that. So there's all these kinds of inconsistencies. And that's why it's just so important that we speak out. And as Brendan said, it has been a surprising moment to see this rise on the right, where it seemed more culturally acceptable coming from the left. Right-wing anti-Semitism was seen as less culturally acceptable, but now we're starting to see more speakers, more podcast hosts, more politicians even that are moving in that direction. So it's something that we really need to keep an eye on. And speaking the truth is essential. Sharing the truth, being proud in our Jewish identity and our support for Israel. That's the only way that you can push back this tide, by fighting the darkness with shining more light. That really has to be the call of the hour. And it's up to all of us, really, to do our bit. Before we finish, I just want to share with you something really important. We are told that Israel's actions are the cause of the Israeli-Arab conflict. but we've just released a groundbreaking documentary proving that Arab Islamic Jew hatred far predates Israel's re-establishment. This is a critical fact that everyone needs to learn about. Have a watch of our trailer for our new JTV Plus documentary entitled Arab Anti-Semitism Before Israel's Re-Establishment. Picture yourself, it's 1834 and you're a Jew living in Tzfat, which is a northern city in Israel, then under the Ottoman Empire. Your family is part of this ancient city's spiritual heart for generations. You study Torah, you trade in the market, and live quietly among your Arab neighbours. But one day, a mob storms your street, shouting, "Kill the Jews!" Your home is looted, your synagogue burned, your loved ones beaten. This isn't about Israel. Israel won't exist for 114 years. This isn't about settlements, the IDF, or the 1948 displacements. This is raw, violent hatred aimed at you for being a Jew. And it's not just in Palestine, it's part of a centuries-old story of anti-Semitism woven into Arab and Islamic history, from the dawn of Islam to the streets of Hebron. The claim that this conflict began with Israel's creation, the Nakba, or modern policies, is a farce, a distortion that collapses under history's magnifying glass. Welcome to JTV Plus. I'm Ollie Annisfeld, and today we're uncovering a history too often buried, the relentless anti-Semitism among Arabs in Palestine before 1948, rooted in a broader Arab and Muslim hostility that began with Islam's inception in the 7th century. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.